Hi everybody, I'm Susan Hughes and I'm a senior consultant at Inspira Futures. I'm a Harvard Business School alum and I've had the great privilege of helping many students over the years get into top business schools. One of the questions that comes up often as we talk to students is this fear of being part of an overrepresented group. While there is some truth to the fact that there are overrepresented groups, we wanted today to take a few minutes to give you a sense of how we think about making sure that you present an application that makes you unique and compelling despite your potential membership in one of those groups. When we talk about those groups from an industry perspective, we're often talking about folks that come from management consulting, from investment banking, from private equity. Certainly there are other demographic backgrounds in countries from which there are stronger representations of candidates. However, there are a lot of ways that when you really dig into your background and your experience, you can make yourself seem unique. I have yet to meet a candidate who, after really understanding their story, doesn't have threads of storyline and conversation that will make them seem very different and very compelling to the admissions committee. One thing that I encourage all of my students to think about is the perspective, the broad perspective with which they approach the process. There's very little productivity to fixating on your overrepresentation if you fall into one of those categories. Things about the industry in which you work or your demographic background are not things that you can change. So it's wise to put those elements of the process aside and focus on the things where you do have some influence. I think the best perspective to take in terms of thinking in that manner is that you are not in competition with the other people in the pool. You have no control over who they are or how they go through their process. The competition is really with yourself in terms of, can you create the most unique and compelling application package possible? So that's the way that I like to think about the work you have to do and the work you can control around eventually reaching success in the application process. In terms of making yourself stand out versus other candidates who may have similar backgrounds to yourself, I think it's important to remember that one of the most valuable parts of the process is what you do before you start writing your essays and before you start completing the application. At Inspira, we spend a long time talking to students about their background and figuring out how their story could unfold in a really unique way in the application. So I encourage you to spend a lot of time on introspection, looking back at your own life and your own experience and thinking about the things that are most impactful for you, the things that are most resonant with your belief system, the things that you are most passionate about. And very often it's those things that, if you study them carefully, can draw out threads of real interest to an admissions committee. I can safely say that for all the years I've worked with candidates, I have yet to meet one that doesn't have really unique stories to tell about themselves, regardless of their background, regardless of the industries in which they've worked. And it's really just a matter of taking the time to find those things and then thinking through the best way to tell those stories. Another area where you have some control and where you should exert some effort is with regard to your test scores. While test scores are only one aspect of the admissions process, and at elite schools, you can be assured that the admissions committee is going to take a very holistic look at everything you present. Test scores are one aspect that matter. You should know the average GMAT or GRE scores at the schools to which you're applying. You should do everything in your power to get your scores at or above those averages. And the way that I think about that is that it just allows the admissions committee to take that aspect of your candidacy off the table and provides them a little extra room to focus on the other things that you talk about in your essays or that your recommenders may explain that may make you more unique. Having said that, I would say that getting a low score does not eliminate your chances of success, but it may make it a little bit more of an uphill battle in the process. And so whatever you can do to raise those scores will be beneficial to you. One of the things that I often like to learn more about with regard to candidates is how they have been involved outside of business hours. The business schools are certainly going to want to know about what you do during the day professionally, but they're equally interested in what your passions are and what your activities are outside of your work. All of these schools are looking for well-rounded leaders. Part of the application process is a discernment about who you are as a human being and how, as a whole person, you can contribute to the class that they're trying to put together. And some of the details and clarity around that picture of you will come from things that you do outside of work. Many of those things will also be things where you are very unique in comparison to the others in the pool. So spend some time thinking about what those community involvements are and think about really highlighting them as you develop your application. Another area where I think applicants sometimes underplay importance is with regard to their recommendations. It's very important to find people who can genuinely express an understanding of who you are, of your strengths, of your weaknesses, of your aspirations. The admissions committee is seasoned at understanding whether a read from a recommender comes across as an authentic depiction of you that comes from real experience with you. So find those people who can very clearly express who you are. Also spend some time trying to help those people understand the other story threads that you're drawing out in your application. You want your final package to come across as a very cohesive and coherent story about you. I often tell candidates that the goal should be creating a picture of yourself that is as clear as possible to the admissions committee. And the way that you do that is by having all of the different aspects of your application hang together and reinforce one another in painting that picture. So explain to your recommenders the story that you're trying to tell to the admissions committee. Explain to them the strengths and weaknesses that you're drawing out in the other elements of the application, and help them to understand how important it is to sort of merge their story into yours. These are just a few actionable tips we hope are useful to you thinking about how to stand out if you happen to be from an overrepresented pool. There are a lot of different ways to maximize your chances of success in this process. If you have questions or would like to discuss some of those further, we certainly welcome the opportunity to set up a call with you. Thanks and good luck on your applications.